In the past videos, we looked at analyzing international politics from an individual and a state level of analysis. So now we're going to look at the international system level. This level is related to looking at all countries and how they interact with each other. So at this level, we want to understand what is it about the international system that makes countries react in a certain way. One of the main points that we have to analyze is that the international system has no world government. So this is known in international relations language as the system of anarchy, which means that the highest level of authority are countries themselves. There are, of course, international organizations like the United Nations and the European Union, but they are not a world government. This, of course, this system of anarchy has a lot of implications on how countries behave, because there is no 911 that countries can call if they have an emergency. So inside countries we have laws, we have law enforcement. If you do anything bad, there is a higher level of authority that can punish you. However, above countries, it's the law of the jungle. So countries must focus on their own security. This makes countries not able to 100% trust each other. There is nothing that will stop a country from going to war. Even if you have good relations with a country now, you'll never know if you'll end up in a war with that country in the future. So it's like marriage and divorce. You can never be sure when a country will turn itself against you. Take Russia and Ukraine, for example. In the past, they had excellent relations. They were considered like brothers themselves. And now they are at war with each other. From this level of analysis, you could kind of argue that countries are like balls in a game of pool billiards. The actions of one country will affect the actions of other countries. So from this perspective, countries are very similar to each other. So the foreign policy of countries will be affected and shaped by the international system of anarchy, and they will behave in a certain way in order to maintain their security and their survival. So they will create alliances, while at the same time they will also rely on their own resources, because countries can never be sure if other countries will really come and protect you. At this level, we can apply some of the main concepts and theories of international relations. We can apply, for example, the realist perspective, which is the most influential perspective. Realism has two variants. The first one is classical realism, which focuses on human nature, saying that it's humans' egoism, self-interests, and pursuit of power that makes countries react in a similar way. And then there is structural realism, which is more prominent nowadays, and this one takes a more scientific approach. This one focuses on explaining international politics based on the nature of the system of anarchy that we mentioned before. Because of this system of anarchy, all countries need to find a way to survive, and they must rely on themselves. So they are mistrustful of other countries. And there are two possible ways to deal with this situation. The first one is for countries to maintain a balance of power. So this is done by having similar power capabilities. So this one is called defensive realism. And the other one is to become the strongest country, so that no other country will want to go to war against you. So this one is known as offensive realism. So both of them are part of structural realism. However, you might get into security dilemmas, where your actions to defend yourself will be seen as threatening by others who will then increase their own power. And then your country will see that as a threat and will then increase their own power, basically leading everyone into a security spiral. We also have the theory of liberalism. So this perspective is that all countries should have the right to independence. And to lower the effects of the system of anarchy, we need to apply characteristics of countries internally and put them at the international level. So this perspective argues in favor of creating an international authority to resolve problems between countries. And this is how the United Nations was created, and some of the other institutions like the European Union. And this perspective also calls for economic interdependence between countries, also to promote democracy and promote human rights. So depending on the situation, whenever we see cooperation, liberalism might be a better perspective. And whenever we see conflict, realism might be better at explaining that. And we can also look at social constructivism, where we look at norms and values. So some countries trust other countries more than others. For example, the United States doesn't see the nuclear capacities of France or the United Kingdom as such a big threat compared to North Korea, which has fewer nuclear weapons. So some countries develop trust based on norms like democracy and respect for human rights, as well as some cultural and social values. This perspective also argues that anarchy is not what makes countries aggressive or concerned with their own security, but rather that this happens due to the interactions between countries and the identities that countries form. Countries get socialized into acting in certain ways, and when countries believe in anarchy, then they have to react to that when they're interacting with other countries. But in reality, you cannot touch the system of anarchy. It doesn't exist. It is a socially constructed idea. It is not a real physical thing. So you can look at international relations from multiple perspectives. You can look at it from the realist perspective, liberalist, or the social constructivist. So here is a list of some of the concepts that you can use for analyzing international relations from the system level. So I just mentioned a few of these concepts, and you can also look at some of the concepts from the state and the individual levels. So that's it for this one, and thanks for watching.